At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking.
On the program today, Nigeria tax reform bill and how it hopes to pave the way for optimum tax system. Later on, countdown to the start of 16th day of activism and improved justice for survival. And in sports, second edition of the African Military Games began. Hello everyone, this is live from Abuja, a show that takes you through the event that have shaped the week in Nigeria and across the world, from politics, news, entertainment and sport. I am Ademola Lawrence. Now we'll start with the highlights of the visit from the Prime Minister of India to Nigeria after 17 years. Although the trip to the African nation might have been the first in almost 2 decades by the Indian Prime Minister. But the ties of both nations go back more than 60 years. Political contacts at the highest level have been the mainstay since the inception. In his opening remark at the meeting with President Bola Tinubu, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, "We give high priority to our strategic partnership with Nigeria." The Grand Commander of the Order of Nigeria National Award was conferred on the PM Modi at a ceremony in Abuja, making him the first foreign leader to receive the award since 1969. Now, the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform says the proposed tax reform bill does not seek to increase the personal income tax, but seeks to shift the revenue distribution paradigm by prioritizing consumption over production. Experts have highlighted its potential to level the playing field for states with large populations but lower industrial activities, which is expected to empower undeserved regions to invest in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. However, concerns linger as states like Lagos and Rivers, which currently benefit from higher VAT revenue, may need more budgetary constraints under the new formula.
Since the transmission to the National Assembly, controversies have told the 4 proposed tax reform laws from the presidency. They are the Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. Northern Governors Forum kicked against certain provisions of the bills, particularly the Nigeria Tax Bill, which will alter the sharing of the value-added tax among federal, states, and local governments. The National Economic Council, chaired by Vice President Kashim Shettima, also advised that the bills be withdrawn for wider consultations. To get clarification and enhance public understanding of the bills, the House of Representatives invites the tax team for more insights.
The sense of all these bills is to enhance our revenue and, of course, to block leakages.
There will be opportunities for Nigerians to air their views and actively participate in shaping the final outcome.
Taxes should be fair, transparent, and justifiable, balancing the need for public revenue with the burdens they impose on individuals and businesses.
The Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform says there is no plan to increase personal income tax. It also proposes tax exemption for minimum wage earners.
That method of sharing VAT has problems. Number one problem is that derivation is based on head office location.
Ours is to implement the law passed by National Assembly.
But a professor of economics from the Ahmadu Bello University punctures the submissions of the government officials. He says the challenge is not in revenue or tax collection, but in efficient management.
But in most cases in Nigeria, those towers don't give a correct directions of course. That's why you cannot even track bandits.
Members ask questions and clarifications on areas of...
I'm now joined by tax expert Abiodun Akonde, who joins me in the studio to talk more about this particular tax reform by the federal government to make sure that, of course, Nigerian tax is, some say, is long overdue. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, viewers.
Yeah, so let's just look at what the issues, of course, are in terms of what this bill is meant to address. Experts say this tax reform could address long-standing disparities in reserves, allocating with far-reaching implications, for Nigeria's economic growth and national development. And you now know what exactly are we looking at in terms of this tax bill reforms.
Okay, thank you for having me this morning. I clearly, before answering your question, it is clear that we put on the table clearly what a good tax system should address, and we call it the canon of taxation. A good tax system should be equitable, it should be fair, it should be transparent, it should be simple, it should be certain. The ease of administration and all of that. So any tax system that fails to address these issues obviously is not a good tax system. And now to your question, I've gone through the bill, the proposed reform, and in fairness, I think the bill is apt. It's a bill that is long overdue to address most of the challenges we have with the Nigerian tax system as is currently operated today. It will address the disparity in the sharing formula of revenue as generated that favors productivity and where activity takes place, and then again taking a little from the federal government and giving to the state and local government to make funds available for them to carry out developmental ideas and objectives as spelled out in their budget.
So I want us to look at a whole lot of things in this budget. First of all, I want us to start with the revenue VAT sharing formula, which of course has also caused some controversies. Now, if this bill is passed, what it simply means is that what the states usually used to get, which is 50%, will now become 55%. Okay. Now, the federal government in itself, will now have to shrink down from 15 to 10%. To 10%. Yeah. The local government formula still remains the same. But help us understand what that simply means. Does it mean that the federal government is now taking less, but does it not mean that the burden is now on the state? But just help us unpack that scenario.
Okay. The truth is that the federal government, in actual fact, is at the center, does not really generate VAT. VAT is local to the environment where consumption happens, because VAT is a consumption tax and all of that. So I think what this bill is trying to do is to address that and take a little bit from the federal government and give to the federating units, the state and the local government. But that's not just the real issue. I think the controversy around the VAT in this bill, which is just an item on the entire bill, is generating these controversies because most of the state governors probably are not carrying their commissioner of finance or the head of their tax body along to know that this will actually benefit them the more. What has been obtainable with the VAT law before is that derivation is only 20%, while population takes 50%, and then the remaining 30% is on non-equity. No, equity is 50%, and then the 30% is on population. So, but what this is trying to address now is that derivation is taking 60%. And derivation in this sense, if you go back to that act, I think is a section 22, subsection 12 of the proposed act, it clearly states that derivation will be clearly stated when filing returns to show where VAT is derived, where the consumption actually takes place, not where the headquarters of the company is, where filing takes place and payment is made, which is what is currently obtainable. So that means states with larger population, with more consumption, being fair to that state, should get more. And what this will also do is to engender competition among states. You want to stimulate economic activity where there will be more consumption, and then you earn more by VAT. The sharing formula currently, or as proposed, is 55 to state, 10 to federal government, and then 35 to the local government. But I think the committee is also proposing that from the state, a 5% equalization will be set aside, where they look at what you're getting from the old system. If this is going to disadvantage you a little bit, from that 5%, they make sure they equalize it, that at the end of the day, you're not getting anything less than you used to get. So I think it's a bill that every state should support. It's not something to oppose, because at the end of the day, the states and the local government are getting more funding.
You know, so while looking at the controversy, you found out that, okay, you see what the northern governors are saying. Some of them saying that, you know, if, for example, Lagos is where Lagos generates a lot, Lagos, Ogun State, of course, the Southwest. Look at the current NBS statistics where they said how much the Southwest is bringing onto the table. And you just wonder, okay, these northern governors are saying that if by virtue of you're saying this is what is going to be obtainable, it's not going to favor us. But some has also said this is like a wake-up call for the northern governors to make sure that they can be able to generate enough from their own region. What's your take on that?
Okay, there's a misconception, and that's why the controversy. Well, there's a whole lot coming from the Southwest. But what this bill is proposing is that it is not where those companies are based. The North has the largest population. It means there's more consumption happening there. So this is going to be more about consumption.
If you say more consumption, for example, let's look at alcoholic beverages, for example. There is more consumption in the South than in the North.
Alcohol is only an item.
I'm just saying.
All the vatable items.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah, really, that's the religion aspect or side to the northern Nigeria and all of that. And then there's nothing anybody can do about that. But other items that are consumed more will generate VAT where they are consumed. And where the population is where people consume the most. And like you rightly pointed out, it's a wake-up call to every state. Stimulate economic activity in your state, create economic activity, make people consume, make funds available to people, let them have disposable income to buy more and consume more, and then you earn more at the end of the day.
Let's look at what the bill is also trying to address. That means that it's taking the ball straight down to the rich table. And it simply means that you look at the mechanisms at which this is going to address all of the tax reforms, or these particular tax reforms. For example, it's saying that, you know, putting mechanisms to ensure that individual customer for a financial institution who has accumulation of 25 million or less, or more rather, to corporate economy, who has 100 million to do, that means that they are trying to say that the rich should not evade tax, which has always been the issue all along. How do you think that? Do you really think that this can actually, bridge that gap?
Okay, the direct answer to your question is yes and no. Okay, I looked at the bill. I think it's a section 28 of that bill that you're referring to, where it talks about information from bank, financial institution, insurance, and all of or stockbroker and other financial institutions. And then I read it thoroughly, and I saw a lacuna. Nigerians are smart. They can take advantage of that. What that section is trying to do is to bring more people into the tax net, where you can't. The financial institution has this obligation quarterly to file a return, listing everybody who meet that threshold. Now, the point is, it's not saying aggregation of all the inflow into your various accounts. It's just a bank account, which means each bank has a responsibility to file. A smart person will have 10 accounts. It has an inflow of over 25 million in a month. It puts 5 here, puts 3 here, and all. Those banks don't have such obligations to file such return. And at the end, the person is missed along the line. You can't pick the person. So I expect that bill will see an aggregation of whatever bank account you have, especially using BVN. Your BVN will pull everything you have and then make. But now it's saying the bank will file that return. So it's not aggregating it, it's transaction per bank.
So how do we bridge that gap where your BVN should be able to, give us the actual?
It's simple. Your BVN is there. A pool on your BVN shows every account you are signatory to.
Exactly.
And then can aggregate whatever inflow into those accounts and all of that. And sincerely, the rich are not paying taxes in Nigeria. You see, the politicians is only when they want to contest election and they make TCC compulsory. They run to a tax office, pay a certain amount and get that. But in real fact, the lifestyle they live, the tax they pay doesn't justify such lifestyle.
Another thing that I probably want you to help me unpack is part of the bill that talks about royalties. And I really want to understand what it means. When I was looking at it, I didn't really understand it. Where you talked about under the new bill, one can assess the royalties on the currency at which, if, for example, if you are trading on that currency, that means that you can assess the royalties either on that currency or in Nigerian currency. I really try to understand.
The challenge with the former bill is that payment of royalty or certain payments on foreign currencies has to be made in that particular currency. But now it allows you to either access or make payment in Naira, which makes conversion, access to forex and all of that, no longer a problem for you to make your tax payment and all of that. So that's what that tries to address.
So let's also look at what the benefits of this would do for the larger percentage of Nigerians. For example, some persons don't even know that, okay, this does not even apply to them. For example, I was checking up the bill, and if, for example, you earn 800,000 naira annually, that means that you're exempt from that bill.
In fact, if you earn 840 and slightly above,
that means that you are exempted.
You are not paying tax. You are not paying anything at all. Totally exempted.
Okay.
Formerly, when it was 30,000, even if at the end of the day you don't have an accessible profit after this thing, you still charge 1% on your gross. But this time around, you're totally exempted. So on the long run, not even on the long run, the short run, medium and long run, those who earn less will pay either less or totally exempted. The amendment to the Personal Income Act was in 2017. I think then minimum wage was 18,000. The value of 18,000 to the value of 30,000 when that minimum wage was increased was probably higher in terms of value, not nominal value, I mean real value. But what that does is that since the act wasn't amended, it pushed people who were ordinarily to pay less to be paying more, though in real terms they were earning less. Now the 70,000 minimum wage today has less value than the 30,000 Nigerians were earning 2 years ago. So invariably, if you don't put up an act like this to exempt them, you are further pushing them into by taking more from them. And at the end of the day, the equity side of tax is not there. At the end of the day, you see that the poor proportionally pay more than the rich. But what this seems to want to address is that the rich should pay a little bit more. If you look at the last band, it's 25%. Progressively, as you earn more, you pay 25% of what you earn.
Because that's progressively, VAT is what I also want to look at. Because from now, what that bill also seems to look at is from 7.5% to 10% in 2025, then from 12.5% between 2026 to 2029. Wouldn't that stiffen the economic space of people who really are doing business, But this tax wouldn't that stiffen?
One of the qualities of a good tax system is adequacy, the ability to take enough to provide social services and all of that. The increase in VAT, I think 7.5 currently is one of the lowest rate you have all over the world. But I don't think anything is wrong with that, looking at also what we earn in terms of minimum wage and then what our per capita income
But
is.
it's not corresponding if you look at it.
It's actually not corresponding. What I mean in essence is a 7.5% VAT today, to me, should be maintained, maybe for the next 2 years. And then let's see all the effort of government, the reforms and all of that in the economy, and the economy begins to yield more, and then people have the ability to pay more. That's what I feel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akone. Really nice to have you.
Thank you so much.
I hope we'll be able to just look at some of these things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll
go on a break. When we'll come back, we'll still have more for you on Live from Abuja. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Advocate and a published author. I am the founder of Celebration, a businesswoman, and a fashion icon. I am a wealth coach and a real estate developer.
I am Amako Arakwe. I'm a corporate commercial lawyer and an entrepreneur.
Welcome to Warhaka. I am Ramatu Shehu Oyibo, an entrepreneur and a business coach.
I am the voice of an average Muslim woman, an hijabite, and a lawyer.
I am a polymath and a serial entrepreneur.
I am Murayo Afolabi Brown, Managing Director, TVC Entertainment. I'm a media consultant, producer, and broadcaster.
The ladies of your view are made of women from different professions, tribes, cultures, and religion. Join us every Monday to Friday as we share our views on topical and social issues.
Voted as the best TV station of the year, TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen. Following all nationwide big and impactful stories, without the news from every perspective, covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
Welcome back. Now, straight to the headlines. President Bola Tinubu has hailed the creation of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, championed by President Luciano Lula da Silva of Brazil, describing the alliance as pivotal in addressing one of the most significant challenges. And Nigeria has gained the support of the World Meteorological Organization to strengthen its climate and meteorological capacity to providing Nigeria with technical assistance as one of its peer advisors. This formed one of the highlights at the 2024 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Baku, Azerbaijan. And the federal government has revoked all previous directives regarding posting restrictions on the National Youth Service Corps, stating that this lifting of restrictions will take effect from the start date of the 2024 Batch C orientation course. This is according to the Director General of the NYSC. And in business, in a major boost for Nigeria's crude oil production, revenue generation and economic growth effort, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited has officially unveiled its latest crude oil grade, the Utape crude oil blend, before the international crude oil capital. And outside Nigeria, an Australian teenager has died after drinking tainted alcohol in Vang Vieng. Last in what Australia's Prime Minister on Thursday called every parent's nightmare. And the US State Department confirmed an American also died in the same party town, bringing a death toll to 4. The United States said it had reopened its embassy in Kiev late on Wednesday after it had shut for the day due to what it called the threat of a significant air attack, a day after Ukraine used American missiles to hit a target inside Russia. Interesting. Now let's go to one of the major stories we're having for you today. Violence against women happens in every country and in culture, causing harm to millions of women and girls. Risk and challenges to access care increase even more for women and girls living in humanitarian emergencies around the world. Today, prolonged and intense conflicts have resulted in a continuous rise in all forms of gender-based violence. The 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is a key international moment to call for an end to violence against women and girls.
The EU-funded 3-day conference organized by the Rule of Law and Anti-Corruption Program and the Ministry of Justice Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Response Unit focuses on access to justice for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. The discussions on seeking justice for survivors identify 3 approaches: survival, perpetrator, and a whole society approach.
I think you have to look at justice holistically. You do not want a situation where somebody who is innocent is going to jail for a crime that they have not committed. And you also don't want a situation where somebody who has been wronged, for whom a crime has been committed against, doesn't get justice for that crime that has been committed against them. So I think you have to look at it from both sides. How can we enable a justice system that is fair? A justice system that allows everybody, rich, poor, old or young, educated or not educated, how do we enable a justice system that looks after everybody's needs?
Justice is that which downplays emotion, very, very objective intervention, prioritizes the needs of the survivor, and ensuring that every component of the society also benefits from justice to the victim. And that includes justice to perpetrators and justice to the entire society.
In her paper presentation, Titilola Vaivo Adeniyi admonished responders and service providers on best practices for survivor-centered approaches.
The term survivor-centered is used to convey a commitment to providing services that prioritizes their needs, their rights, their interests, confidentiality, and autonomy of the recipient of those services. It recognizes that they are the experts of their life. We are there to support.
ROLAC promises continued support for state and federal government on criminal justice initiatives and reforms that will enhance access to justice, not only for survivors of SGBV, but for everyone unlawfully arrested. Moya Thomas, TVC News, Abuja.
And I'm joined in the studio by Projects Manager, Access to Justice, ROLAC Program, Oluwatoyo Sigiwa. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
This is a conversation that is very, very critical, very germane at this particular point in time. You look at, sexual and gender-based violence, what it meant, But let's just first look at it before we now dwell into the specifics. what gender-based violence means in general for the audience?
Well, basically, gender-based violence is violence that is committed against someone because of their gender. Basically because of their gender, because they are male or because they are female, or because of the cultural and social norm or normative attribution to their gender role. That's basically what sexual and gender-based violence is. And of course, statistics and data has shown over the years, over decades, that it disproportionately affects women and girls, basically because of the power dynamics in the society, especially in Africa, where a lot of people put a lot of stock in religion and cultural attitudes and norms.
I think we should start from that business, culture and religion, which has also kind of stifled that part where people can't talk about it, and there's that issue of if you talk about it, something, what happened. How do we navigate that part where people can actually come out and say, this happened to me at this particular, and you not be stigmatized for it?
Well, what I will admit is that it's a gradual process. As society grows and advances, here in Nigeria, all over the world, people need to get more comfortable talking about the difficult issues. The unfortunate thing about sexual and gender-based violence is that it's one of those insidious crimes, usually done in the dark, usually done in secret, and therefore the perpetrator tends to hold the victim to ransom because they know that society frowns and ascribes some level of shame, guilt, responsibility, and blame on the victim rather than the perpetrator or the person who has committed the crime. So it is the secrecy that is associated with sexual and gender-based violence that keeps survivors or restrains survivors. They feel that they cannot report what has happened to them and get sympathy. They do not trust that the system or society will protect them. They do not trust that the system or society will believe them. And what we need to be doing is to remove that cloak of secrecy. We need to remove that cloak of shame or guilt, that burden of shame or guilt that society has placed on the survivor. We need to start lifting it up by talking about it, by not stigmatizing the people who come forward, and by not turning away those people who approach the system for help.
There have been stories of where children try to talk and the parents try to shut them down. Do you think that there needs to be a punishment for that?
Of course, but what I will first say is that we need to also recognize that the same shame and guilt that society has placed on survivors, parents and family members, intimate partners, spouses, friends, they are also existing within that ecosystem, and they too bear some of the burden of the shame and guilt. But that said, in Lagos State, for instance, it is an offense. And within the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, it is an offense to aid or abet or try and cover up a sexual crime.
So let's look at some of the pointers and things to look out for when it comes to gender-based. What are the things that we need to look? What are the pointers one need to look at?
There are different forms of sexual and gender-based violence. There's the physical violence, sexual assault, where there's physical violence involved. There is what we call, in many of the variations of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition law, what you call defilement, which is basically child rape. There is economic violence, there is forced isolation, there is economic deprivation, where you withdraw with resources intentionally from someone so that you compromise their ability to function effectively in society. And there is also intimate partner violence, there's domestic violence. There is, as we are advancing in the world and as everybody is more online, there is technologically facilitated sexual and gender-based violence. There is image-based GBV, which basically means GBV that is perpetrated in the online space, which is, of course, linked to cyber crimes. And as we evolve and begin to experience these new forms of sexual and gender-based violence, as well as the forms in which they now manifest, the experience of the survivors, we need to also be planning and ensuring that our response reflects the gravity of the crime, the nature of the crime, the space within which those crimes are perpetrated, so that we can respond effectively when it happens.
One aspect of this conversation that also led us to explore is, there's a conversation where when you talk about gender-based violence, what everybody seems to think is that you're talking about the women and girls, which is, of course, because to a large extent, yeah, they are the ones who are affected mostly, and, but there's also the boy who also witnessed that stuff, so how do we begin to, have this conversation? I was talking to somebody and I said that I think that we're trying to treat the branch instead of
the tree.
And the roots. Because if you are saying that, the woman should do this and do that, the person who committed the crime, you are actually, or the person who this thing has happened to, you are also neglecting, because that guy who has witnessed something of such will grow up. His mentality will change. How do we begin to have that conversation where the boy child is also effectively put into this conversation, to address this gender-based violence?
I think that conversation is already taking place. If you look at the data from across sexual assault referral centers across the country, in the states where they exist, you begin to see a rise over the past 10 years in the number of boys that are reporting sexual and gender-based violence against them. You begin to see a rise in the number of children, not just boys now, but notably boys. There's an increase, especially boys that are under the age of 13 years old. So your programming or your planning, policy making has to begin to recognize that, driven by the data that is available. And where there is no data available, you need to dig a little bit deeper. If you don't have the data, then you don't know how many boys are experiencing this. And that therefore means that you are not reaching the boys. And if you are not reaching the boys, it means your programming and your response will continue to be faulty, because you don't know how to respond to boys when they present with GBV. It is easy to figure out, because we've been doing that for decades now, to understand what a woman or a girl goes through and how she experiences and tries to heal from GBV. But there is less known about how men and boys experience and deal with GBV. And you find that in many of the places where help is available, some of the frontline staff, most of the frontline staff are women. And again, you want to begin to ensure that when men enter these so-called safe spaces, they have access to people that they can trust, who they think will understand what has happened to them and the peculiarity of it, because it's different for men and boys as it is with women and girls. So I think it's in the programming. It's been deliberate, a little bit more deliberate in terms of the thinking around what men and boys need. Both from the prevention side now, what do we need to be saying to men and boys? How do we ensure that men step forward a little bit more to protect and educate boys a little bit more? Not just around what amounts to GBV and how to avoid being a potential perpetrator, but also how to not to put yourself in a situation that you will become the victim yourself. Sure. And also in response, what exactly do men and boys need if they are victims of domestic violence, if they are victims of GBV? How do our schools respond? How do our police complaints desks respond? And how do sexual assault referral centers that we work with, how do they also respond effectively to men and boys?
I think you just take it out of my mouth, because that's where my next question is going. How do we begin to respond to all of these things? The statutory agencies who are given the authority to undo this kind of issues, are we seeing enough from them? The NGOs who are involved, is the awareness enough? Are they having that conversation with the agencies who are in charge? Is there a lacuna that needs to be bridged? Those conversations, are we having them, and how do we bridge them?
We are having those conversations, and I would say that we are not where we were 5 years ago. A lot of progress has been made. In 2013, there was only one sexual assault referral center in Nigeria. Today, there are 47 sexual assault referral centers across 22 states. There is progress. 5 years ago, I think we had just about 2 or 3 states that had judges that were designated to handle sexual offenses. Yeah. But now we have several states that have designated judges particularly to handle sexual offenses. 5 years ago, there was nothing like a national sexual offender database, or maybe 6 years ago. Now you have a national database of sexual offenders as well as equivalent databases in multiple states. So there is progress. What we need is more of the same type of progress. We need more capacity building. We need investigators, those who are at the front line, who manage these reporting channels, to be trained. We need them to recognize that SGBV is a crime and not be influenced by their cultural or religious perceptions, and to recognize it for what it is. We need them to operate within the context of the existing and enabling legislation. We need stronger investigative protocols that will recognize survivors and the situation that they are in, recognize their trauma, and not re-traumatize them or make their healing process a little bit more difficult. We need to strengthen our prosecutorial procedures. And of course, when the cases get to court, the judges need to be aware that this is how best, in terms of best practice now, to handle and adjudicate cases of sexual and gender-based violence. So everybody needs to work together. It's not one agency or one sector. All of us need to be consulting, coordinating, monitoring, evaluating, and assessing what we're doing. And most importantly, we need to be talking to the survivors themselves. We need to ensure that we're getting feedback. How are they experiencing all of these justice channels? Are they effective? Where are the gaps? We need to be speaking with the people that we claim that we are trying to help and getting feedback that will, of course, inform improvements in the justice sector.
I want to ask you this, and this is very important. Tell us about the sexual assault referral centers and how they can be, how impacts. Just tell us.
So sexual assault referral centers basically are safe spaces that have been designed or established to respond to some of the gaps that we've already spoken about. The gap in reporting, availability of reporting channels, and the gaps in effective investigation and prosecution. So they are a safe space that offers services free of charge to survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, emergency medical services, trauma counseling services, support to navigate the legal system or the justice process, recognizing that these are the immediate things that a survivor will need if they have experienced a sexual assault. And overall, they ensure that there is confidentiality and that no matter what story the survivor has come with, no matter what their situation as they have described it is, they are believed and not judged for what has happened to them, and that they support the survivor to the point where they are now willing to engage with the justice process. Sexual assault referral centers are also a mechanism to ensure that if there is any report of child sexual abuse or defilement, that report goes immediately to the authorities, to the police, and to the State Ministry of Justice.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It's a conversation that I really wish we can just have more, but our time is fast spent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Let's move to the next story now. We'll tell you a non-profit organization has made donations to over 100 indigent patients at the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Gwagwalada. The gift and cash worth over 3 million naira was donated to help ease the financial hardship of patients who cannot afford hospital essentials. Speaking at the event, the founder of the organization highlighted that the outreach is part of the ongoing effort to give back to the community and bring smiles to the face of the less privileged through the providing some form of relief to patients. The foundation donated a variety of essential items like bathing soap, toiletries, disinfectant, and detergent. The day ended as patients and caregivers took time to participate in a selection of games to uplift their spirits and win prizes.
outreach. We decided to come to Wagalada Teaching Hospital to reach out to the pediatric section, the children in particular. You know, the children are the picture of, you know, of our tomorrow. So what better way than to see how we can cater for the ones that are already not feeling too well or in need of financial help to, you know, get out of the world. So whatever we can do to help them, for them to get better, so that, you know, humanity keeps getting better and the world is all better for it. We reached about 220 beds. Okay. So we met a lot, and I think we also diverted to the trauma section too as well, because we had extra things for them. So yes, I mean, I'm sure we did not cater to everybody in the hospital, but I'm sure we're able to reach out to some significant number of people, and I hope that.
And now to some entertainment news. Hollywood legend Denzel Washington has shared intimate details about the struggles with alcohol over the years. The two-time Academy Award winner revealed that his journey with wine consumption, describing it as a 15-year pattern that started subtly but evolved into a regular habit, recounting how a wine cellar in a home he built in 1999 became a source of indulgence. And Coachella annually attracts thousands of people who gather at the Empire Polo Club in Indio, California, to see some of the world's most famous artists perform. The lineup for the 2025 edition has been announced, with over 100 artists on the roster of the three-day event. Nigeria superstar Rema will be joining Afrobeat star Seun Kuti at the Nigerians that will grace this stage. And Ridley Scott's highly anticipated Gladiator 2 has made an impressive debut at the Nigerian box office, grossing 99.1 million naira in its opening weekend, making it the second highest opening of the year. According to data from the Nigerian box office, the epic, directed by Ridley Scott, gained 8.96 million naira ahead of its weekend release. Miss Universe Nigeria Chidima Adeshina has revealed plans to step back from pageantry to focus on her education and explore new opportunities in modeling and acting. This decision follows a historic performance at the 2024 Miss Universe competition. The 23-year-old, who represented Nigeria alongside 125 contestants from around the countries, was also crowned Miss Universe Africa and Oceania during the event. Nigeria came second, with Chidima Adeshina coming behind Miss Denmark, of course, who won the keenly contested crown from the Miss Universe 2023 Shanice Paculios of Nicaragua. Of course, joining me via Zoom is the current Nigerian Queen, Miss Adenike Adebayo. Hello, how are you doing?
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. It's nice to have you on the show. Let's just go straight to the point. So you have your own share of experience from the pageant and all. Tell us what it's like for you.
Well, for me, it's been all rosy. I have not had any awful experience throughout all my endeavors in the pageant industry. They've been really great experiences.
Because when you say they're really great, some persons might not be able to say that, but that's good for you. Let's look at, as a beauty queen yourself, how do you think Chidima handled herself during the entire competition?
Oh, I think she was phenomenal. She did great. She put herself out there and she carried all she had to carry with grace. She did exceptionally great. Most people won't be able to go through what she went through and still represent their country the way she did it. She was flawless and she was outstanding out there.
I can't agree less with you. You look at some of the controversies that have triggered that competition, right from where in South Africa down to where she came to Nigeria, and of course before she went to Miss Universe. So many controversies in that particular one. But tell us, what comes after a win? Like what should we expect from Chidima? Although she's taking time off her education going forward, is that something that you think that is good for her this particular time? I know you are not her, but as a queen yourself, what do you think?
Well, after the grand finale and the winner is crowned, the winner is expected to represent the organization.
Okay, I'm very sure these are technologies issues, technical issues. Can you hear me now? Hello? Okay, I just hope that we'll be able to get her and to say congratulations once again to Chidinma. He has done Nigeria proud, and I think that every Nigerian should be proud of what she did at the Miss Universe, despite the controversies and the scandals that trade the particular pageant. Okay, I meant to understand you're back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm back.
Yeah. So you were saying something. Can you continue from where you continue from where you stopped?
Okay, I said after the winner is crowned, she is expected to make appearances, courtesy visits, and interviews, just as I think she has been doing already. So she gets to visit organizations that are affiliated with the organization she's currently serving. And I guess we'll be getting more of that from her. So she is a representative of the brand she's affiliated with now. So I guess we'll be seeing more from her. And she probably has charity work or her pet project, which must be there to her to carry on with.
From the way she sounded when that interview was conducted, it does look like, man, I just want to dump everything and just go back to education. That's the way it sounded. But do you think that's the right decision for her at this time?
Well, I think she can focus on her education, which is really important for her personal development. But it doesn't stop her from carrying out her duties as the reigning queen, as the reigning Miss Universe Africa and Oceania. It doesn't really interfere, I think. So she should be able to manage her schedules, the programs she has, and everything she has to do. So I don't think one should hinder the other. But maybe what she means by that statement is that after her reign as Miss Universe Nigeria and as Miss Universe Africa and Oceania, she's going to face her education. That's how I'm trying to understand it.
Okay, that's good. Of course, it's a good one. She won. She's the first runner-up, and I think that's a very good one. But my last question to you is, how can young girls be encouraged, to see themselves as beauty queens? But that space, there's a lot of misinterpretation in that space. How do we begin to see, correct that notion, change that perspective, have the right narrative, while you're still keeping your head straight as a beauty queen? Okay, I think we lost the network. Let's now move straight to sport. 1,625 athletes and officials across Africa are participating in the second edition of the African Military Games taking place in the nation capital of Abuja. Declaring the event open, President Bola Tinubu was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, emphasized the role of sport in promoting physical fitness, discipline, and resilience among military personnel. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, said the games are expected to imbibe the spirit of sportsmanship as athletes engage each other in various sporting events. He assures that the Armed Forces of Nigeria would continue to project its partnership with other armed forces across Africa and the bid to enhance capacity to defend the territorial integrity of the countries across the region. The games have been said to provide a platform to showcase the rich heritage and talent inherent in the armed forces of Africa. And that's our wrap for today on the show. Join us next week as we bring you stories happening in sports, entertainment, politics, and lifestyle. My name is Ademola Lawrence. Have a beautiful weekend.
Mm-hmm.